Welcome to Spilling the Tea on Non-Monogamy with me, Gaz Darkwood. Spilling the Tea is a podcast dedicated to speaking with different people who practice non-monogamy in all of its forms to pull together as many different perspectives and experiences as possible, all into one place. In each episode, I'll be joined by a different guest to talk about their own non-monogamy experience. I'm always looking for more guests, as without you, there would be no podcast. So if you would like to be a guest, please send an email to spillingtheteapodcast@outlook.com. On this episode, I'm joined by Julie.
Hi. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So first question I want to ask you is do you want to just tell me your age, rough age, and how long you've been practicing non-monogamy?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently 31 years old, and I've been practicing non-monogamy for over 5 years at this point.
Perfect. So can you tell me about your current situation? Like, are you seeing anyone? Do you have partners, or how things work for you?
I am seeing a few people, but I don't have any partner that I would consider a very committed relationship at this point. But yeah, single and dating.
Yeah, that's fair. So how do you label yourself? How you practice non-monogamy? Do you class yourself as non-monogamous, or do you class yourself as polyamorous, or any other labels you use for yourself?
Most of the time that I've been doing it, I've been saying basically non-monogamous, but for the past few months, I've been identifying more and more as polyamorous for different reasons. I think it just makes sense because I realized that I'm more than capable of loving different people at the same time, regardless of the label of the relationship. So yeah, the label polyamorous has been making more sense for me lately.
Yeah, that's great. So can you tell me just a bit about how that kind of evolved, like how non-monogamy started for you and how it's now, at what point, or if any particular thing just made you realize that you were maybe more polyamorous, or did things just change as they went along?
Yeah, sure. So my journey started, as I said, about 5 years ago. At the time, I was starting a new relationship, which started as a monogamous relationship, but very quickly we started discussing ethical non-monogamy because, especially to me, made sense as I understood that while I could see myself loving that person for the rest of my life, and I still do, I cannot see myself not wanting to fall in love again with other people. So that's how it started. And as many other people do, we started opening up the relationship and trying to figure out what worked for us. There was a pandemic in the middle, which made things harder to kind of be involved with other people at the same time. So for most of that relationship that lasted 3.5 years, it was mostly monogamous, even though we were always discussing it. And yeah, like after that relationship ended, I basically jumped headfirst into finding out what I wanted for myself. And one of the things that I focused the most was taking romantic relationships outside of the center of my life. So basically, I started focusing on other types of relationship and how they worked for me. And what I realized through doing that was that, yeah, I'm more than capable of loving multiple people at the same time and different types of love. And at this point that I am right now, I don't necessarily differentiate relationships in my life, either they being romantic or not. They are relationships. And yeah, so it makes sense to use the label polyamorous, even though I'm not in any committed relationship at this point.
Yeah, that's great. And to be honest, I think the whole thing with polyamory, like if you're polyamorous and that's the way you live your life, it doesn't matter if you've got partners currently or in any serious relationship. It doesn't stop you being any more or less polyamorous. But yeah, it's really interesting actually what you say about not placing importance on romantic relationships and how you just place importance on relationships in general. And that's that I definitely learned from polyamory, that I place more importance in friendships, and I think maybe it's something I always did as well, but before kind of learning that non-monogamy or specifically polyamory were a thing, I didn't know that that's what I was doing. But I think just platonic friendships were always quite important to me, obviously in a different way to romantic relationships, but it's only after learning more about polyamory as a whole that I realized actually, no, those relationships are just as important, just in their own ways.
Yeah.
So I do put a lot of stock into friendships and the kind of, for lack of a better word, love that I have for my friends. Like, they're my friends. I have feelings for them in the sense that I enjoy spending time with them. I enjoy talking to them. I want to do things with them. I want to see them. I want to talk to them. And I think that's something that took learning about and understanding polyamory to realize that was the case.
Yeah, for me as well. I guess I had to understand that it's not because of the type of commitment that you have with someone. It's more like the effort and the energy that you put in a relationship. That's how it becomes meaningful. And then you start seeing that relationship as a part of your life. And moving forward, you're going to put more energy and more time and more resources. And that's going to become more and more part of your life, regardless of the type of involvement that you have with the people. So, yeah, I agree. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm one of those people that tends to, I think it's quite common, but like just don't notice flirting. Like someone could be flirting with me and I haven't got a fucking clue. Like if I meet someone and we start chatting and I get on with them, my first thought is like, oh, cool. Like I'm building a friendship here. I'm making a friend. That's always like the thing that comes first to me. I'm not thinking about like romantic feelings or sexual feelings. Like that will generally come afterwards. But like there's an excitement to me that comes with just getting to know someone new, even on a friendship level. Which, like I said, I think is something I always had. I just didn't really know that it was a thing until I started learning about polyamory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting how just you saying that you put a bit more stock into your friendships as well, not just romantic relationships. Quite interesting, kind of aligns with my way of thinking as well.
Yeah, no, that was definitely the best part of this whole discovery, I think. And it wasn't something that I saw it coming when I first started. I guess it was way more about my relationship at the time and how that applied to that relationship. And now it's completely another situation. And at the same time, it's something that affects the way that I do relationships in general. And yeah, it goes for every single relationship now. And it changed the way that I do everything in my life, I think. So it became a big part of my identity, I would say, as well.
Yeah, I think that's a thing with monogamy in general. And I've said this before. I mean, I've said this before on the podcast. I think I've said it out loud to people many times. But I think a lot of the things you learn about polyamory are actually things that a lot of monogamous people would do well to learn as well. You know, just how to deal with your feelings, how to communicate with your partners. I think polyamorous people communicate with their partners much better than monogamous people do, just because monogamous people don't ever learn to do it, or they don't see that there's a need to do it. They're, two people are together, they're a unit, and that's just how it is. There's not much that they need really, and they need to work through these things. Whereas when you're polyamorous, actually, so I'm similar situation to you. I was in a monogamous relationship with my wife, and we opened our relationship as the terminology that's used. And we're both polyamorous now and have been for a few years. But the difference, I think, is that now our communication between the two of us is much better than it ever was previously. And that's just one massive positive that's come for the two of us from exploring this thing. And I kind of want other monogamous couples that you don't have to explore polyamory. I'm not saying you should be doing any of this, but I kind of feel like you should do some reading about the foundational things within relationships which comes with polyamory, just help you both communicate better and kind of disentangle, because I think a lot of couples do become, to a certain extent, codependent because they kind of become this one unit and forget that they can actually be two completely separate people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I completely agree with you on that. And I have one of my best friends. She is monogamous, but I call her an enlightened monogamous, because she's the kind of person, she really she's really interested in other ways that you can have relationships, and she likes to hear about my life and my relationships and the things that I experience. And she actually puts a lot in practice in her own life, and she questions the structure of the relationship that she has with her partner, and whether that's really like what she should be doing or not. And I think it's very cool that even though she's so interested in learning about other ways of having relationships, she's choosing in a very informed way to be in a monogamous relationship. She's not choosing it just because it's the norm or because it's what she's being told is the right way of doing it. So yeah, I find it very cool, and I agree with you. I think a lot of people would benefit from learning about non-monogamy, even if they decide not to practice it.
Yeah, definitely. And especially what you said there of your friend that is aware of non-monogamy and polyamory while being in a monogamous relationship, and giving that kind of, I don't know, that backbone to the relationship, that solidity to say, I'm not in a monogamous relationship just because that's the norm and that's what's expected of me and that's what I've been led to believe I should do. There are other options. I'm aware that there are other options. I've learned about them, but actually I still want to be monogamy. That's how it works for me. And I think that's actually a really healthy way of looking at things. I think there are quite a lot of people, or at least a percentage of people who are non-monogamous, who actually will shun monogamy and say that it's bad and it's harmful, it's toxic or whatever. But I've always stood by the fact that like everyone's different. Like personally, monogamy doesn't work for me, but for plenty of people it does. So why should they do any different? If they're happy, then I don't think they should have to change their way of doing anything. But I do think it's worth, and this is with any walk of life, it's worth being informed of all the options and all the possibilities. And are you doing that because you want to, and that's what's right for you, or are you doing it because you didn't know there were other ways of doing things?
Yeah, completely agree. I going back to something you said before as well about you understanding better your feelings and being better at communicating how you feel. I love like another thing that non-monogamy taught me is that I think when it comes to non-monogamy, a lot of people will say that they couldn't do it because they would get too jealous or something like that. And I think when it comes to jealousy, it has taught me that jealousy is usually a sign of something you have to investigate within your feelings. And nowadays I see it as an opportunity, to understand myself better and maybe go after something that I need that I'm not getting in a relationship, or I don't know, advocate for a boundary of mine that is being crossed. And I think that a lot of people would benefit from that as well, and not seeing as this monster that needs to be avoided, So yeah, I learned so much from it that I don't think I would be the same if I didn't try this, like it changed my life. And yeah, I really think it changed for the best.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that you say, the whole jealousy thing. I think that the jealousy in monogamous relationships is kind of so normalized. Like, of course, you're not supposed to like the idea of your partner with someone else. Of course, you're going to feel jealous. It's not normal. It's bad, and therefore you wouldn't be happy about it. But actually, no. If you question that stuff, like why do you feel that? What is bad about it? And I think one myth actually is that jealousy is a bad thing, because like you said, actually it gives you reason to stop and think and question in yourself, hang on, why is this making me jealous? Why is this giving me this unpleasant feeling? Like, is it actually what my partner's doing or what the other person is doing? Or is it just the way I'm interpreting it and the way my feelings are working around it? And at the end of the day, your feelings aren't really someone else's responsibility. Like, that sort of thing, but being jealous is completely fine. Everyone feels jealousy at some point or another. But the important thing is how you deal with your own jealousy. If you blow up at your partner and tell them, I don't like this, I don't like that you did that, I want you to stop doing that, that's not helpful. But if you look inwardly and talk to yourself and think, why is it that's making me feel this way? And then if you approach your partner and say, just so you know, I had some weird jealous feelings when you did this. It's nothing bad on you. I'm not telling you off. I just want you to know, and we can try and work through it. Or can you help me work through it? And together, can we help understand what this is and how we will go about it in future to maybe try and prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful when you actually can do these things. Of course, it's not what always happens, and I guess everyone has had like examples of situations where that didn't work. But because like people will fail and like will not be able to manage their feelings all the time as well. But that's the same for monogamous relationships. So yeah, no, but I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and you say that that's the same with monogamous relationships. That's one thing. Like so often I see things online that people will talk about opening up their relationship, or they are practicing non-monogamy, or they're polyamorous, or whatever the situation is. And then you always get people saying like, oh, open relationships never work. Polyamorous relationships never work. I'm like, hang on. A lot of the time, monogamous relationships don't work. How many monogamous people have got exes? How many exes have they got? You know, the reason they've got an ex is because at some point that monogamous relationship didn't work anymore. So there's incompatibility in all walks of life. Just because you're polyamorous or non-monogamous and you've learned all these things, it doesn't mean that at some point you're going to become incompatible with a person, and that's okay. Like it's fine if it doesn't work anymore for whatever reason, if it's based on one person's feelings or the fact that one person likes to do things one way and the other person doesn't like that and would prefer it to be done another way. You don't have to stay in a relationship together. That's fine. Like any incompatibilities can arise, and no one's going to force you to stay in a relationship that you're not completely content with.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that takes me to another thing that I also discovered through non-monogamy. It's okay for relationships to end, and I learned to accept, like, not easily, but at least to accept to a certain extent that relationships need to end and transition to something else at some point. But if you allow me to ask you a question, it feels that every time that I talk about this with people that are practicing and have a good understanding of non-monogamy, that we agree on like most things, as we can see in this chat. Do you think that there's something we can do to like kind of like cross the bridge, or is this what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve? You know, like to communicate with people that don't necessarily agree and don't necessarily see your side.
But I think so. One of the key reasons for starting this podcast was really for. So I think if you're new to non-monogamy, or if you just hear about it or someone tells you about it and you want to start exploring it, if you go online, you're going to read some blogs written by one person, and that's that one person's opinion, that one person's views. If you listen to a podcast, it's that one person talking and it's that one person's views. If you read a book, it's not the author, it's that one person that's written it, it's one person's views. So you're getting one person telling you this is how I do it. But okay, that's fine, but your own way of doing it may not fit with that. So my idea with the podcast was that I have a different person each episode, and you all give all different views. So someone that's new to it can take that information from everyone. I think way for sort of getting that information out to new people is, can hear all these different views and all these different opinions. My thing with that and how I think it all comes down to communication. If you're, if you and your partner aren't seeing eye to eye and you have different ways of doing things, I think you've just got to communicate. And this, it's like, the three core principles are communication. Right. And if the relationship is ever going to work out, you'll be able to have that conversation and come out the other side of it. So it could be anything, like, oh, you doing this makes me feel bad. I'm not telling you to stop it, but can you do it in a slightly different way? Or when you do that, can you inform me beforehand in such a way so that I know, and then I can deal with it easier? And if the relationship's going to work, if you're both compatible enough, that will happen. They'll say yes, they'll be okay with it. If they turn around and say no, and reject your reasonable request and say, no, look, I know you want that, but I don't want that, so I'm not going to do it. Well, to me, that's an incompatibility, and it's not worth. I think people cling on to relationships in general a lot longer than they should do, and sometimes there are signs that it's just not going to go well. Maybe it's not worth pursuing anymore, and I think that's one of them. If someone can't see eye to eye on something like that, then I think, is it really worth continuing that relationship?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think people do stay in relationships longer than they should because, yeah, you just get attached to people. And I guess that's not necessarily the problem, but sometimes recognizing that maybe that relationship needs to transition to something else, Like when I spoke earlier about my ex-partner who I started this non-monogamy journey with, we are now reconnecting and building a friendship. And it's actually like, to me, it's been beautiful to experience this, like creating a new relationship. And it doesn't mean that the relationship that we had before wasn't important or wasn't good. It's just, it had to end, and now we're giving a chance to something different. And then you find out that you also can build other parts of the relationship that worked really well before, it can continue to work, but without the romantic part at this point. But who knows? The future is all we know. So yeah, I think that's really nice.
Yeah, I think that's the thing as well, that people tend to see things in kind of black and white.
Yeah.
And what by that I mean that, like, oh, either we're in a relationship together or we're not. And actually there is a lot of grey area, like you say, that like, okay, maybe you don't work as a romantic couple anymore, but maybe you do work as friends. Right? Maybe because you're incompatible in this one way, 1 out of 10 ways you're incompatible. Well, you're still compatible in those other 9 ways. So the relationship can shift in a way to that,
Yeah.
into a place that you are compatible. And if you're compatible as friends and you've got a friendship out of it, then great. So I see that as a big positive.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, another thing following on from that I think people. So one thing is then about people staying in relationships too long. I think it's a similar thing for some monogamous relationships and some non-monogamous relationships. And I think with some monogamous relationships, a lot of people actually fear being alone, and they would rather stay in a relationship they're not completely happy with than not have any relationship at all.
Yeah.
And I think that works in a similar way with some non-monogamous people. Let's use polyamory specifically, that people feel like, if I don't have multiple partners, am I really polyamorous? Can I claim to be polyamorous if I only have one partner? Well, the answer is yes. But I think some people don't necessarily think like that. So they may have, say, 2 partners. One of them, the relationship's not going well, they're not fully compatible with, they may not be completely happy, but they don't want to end that relationship because then they're left with only one partner. And then they think, I can't be polyamorous if I only have one partner, which I think is quite it's a harmful way of thinking. And that's something that I kind of like people to learn their way out of. Like, it's fine. You can still be polyamorous if you've got one partner. You can be polyamorous if you've got no partners. It doesn't change anything. It's not a competition. You're not invalid if you only have one partner or if you have no partners. It doesn't matter. So I don't like the idea of people staying in relationships because they feel like they should or they need to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, like, the first question you asked me whether like I'm single or like I'm dating, and like I tend to not use that label anymore as well, because for me it doesn't make any sense to define myself as being single, because it's a definition based on one type of relationship. And my life is so full of love and relationships in general that I don't think it makes sense to put a label on that, the same way that it doesn't necessarily impact whether I am polyamorous or not, if I am in a relationship. And I think the same goes for, I don't know, my bisexuality, because if I was monogamous and I was in a relationship with a man or with a woman, then that would make me straight or gay. And I don't think so, because that's part of my identity. And I know that a lot of people that practice non-monogamy will say that being polyamorous is not necessarily part of their identity, but I guess you get to choose as well whether that's part of who you are or part of what you practice. But I would agree with you from what you said, that having 1, 2, or multiple partners doesn't define who you are or what you are, I guess.
No, yeah, and actually the way you tied it into bisexuality is actually a really good good analogy for it. Yeah, like if you're in a relationship with a person of one gender, does that mean you're no longer interested in the other gender? Of course not. That's just circumstance. And this is one thing, one analogy that I like to use for monogamous people when they ask me about these sort of things. Like, oh, so if you're interested in partner A, what happens with partner B? Or if you start liking one thing, what about the other thing? And I think, okay, do you drink tea? Most people in the UK drink tea. Okay, so therefore you don't drink coffee. No, I also drink coffee. Okay, so how's that different? So when you're drinking coffee, are you cheating on tea? Do you not care about tea in the same way anymore? Like I like both. I do prefer tea, but I can go days without drinking coffee because I'm drinking tea. But then when I have a cup of coffee, I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And tea doesn't mind, because half an hour later, I'll have a cup of tea. But, and it's you can have these things at the same time, and one doesn't erase the other in any way. You can just handle both. I mean, no one's going to sit there and drink half tea and half coffee, I hope, anyway.
Or
but
you can put the two together and drink both, I guess.
You can. I agree you physically can, but I definitely believe you shouldn't do that.
Are we still talking about tea and coffee?
Yeah. Yeah, before we get too off. So one thing that I'm interested in asking you I say you class yourself as, well, this is one thing actually. You say that you're dating. Do you say you class yourself as single at the moment?
Yeah, in the sense that I don't have a committed partner at this point. Not in terms of romantic relationships, because I do have some people in my life that I call life partners, but they are mostly platonic relationships. So even the person who I share my home with, and another friend who's a platonic partner who I talk every day, and I do consider them in every single decision that I make in my life. So but no, I don't have any committed romantic relationship at this point in my life.
Yeah, so this is one thing so if someone says to me, like, are you single or are you in a relationship? Well, kind of both in a way. So a word that I prefer to use is available or unavailable. So are you single? No, I'm not. Are you in a relationship? Yeah, I am. But am I available? Yes, potentially, depending on what it is you're offering, and based on how much time and energy and resources I have around everything else going in my life, I am potentially available. But I think, especially in the world of non-monogamy, single is kind of a unnecessary word in a way.
Yeah,
because like you say, you class yourself. Say you have got other people in your life, you have got people that are important to you, and you're really close with and you share a lot with. So you could ask yourself, am I single, or is it that I'm available? Because even though you have these relationships, you are still open to other possibilities. I don't mean to push this on you. I'm just using you as anyone, whoever's listening.
I completely agree. I understand it. I agree. Yeah. And I tend to use the words available and unavailable as well. And for the most part, recently I've been finding myself quite unavailable just due to lack of time and energy to date. But yeah, nothing to do with other commitments with other people. It's just, the phase and myself.
Yeah, I completely understand. That's one of the things I think is also really important especially in polyamory, like for people to learn about themselves, is time management. And I don't mean time management as in making sure you're on time to things and not being late, but it's more about understanding your own availability, like understanding your own schedule, and actually how much time have I got for more people. Well, if I work Monday to Friday, I do this on the weekends, I do this 2 evenings a week, how much time does that actually leave? Okay, that leaves 2 evenings of the week where I'm technically free, but that's the only downtime I've got as well. So do I really want to be filling that time? Because I'll end up burning myself out. And I think it's very easy for people to, especially when they first start exploring non-monogamy, to just kind of like a dog chasing cars. They want to go after everything. Like, yeah, I can do that. But actually it's important to learn kind of how to manage your own time, but also understanding how much time, how much energy you've actually got, and what you can give, what you can offer to someone.
Yeah, and I definitely struggled with that in the past. The dating burnout is a real thing, I'm gonna say. And yeah, I'm still learning how to manage that. And I really like what you said, because I think a lot of people will see this as, oh, what this potential relationship can give me. But I think you really have to consider what you can offer when you start a relationship with someone. And it doesn't really matter what type of relationship that is, even if it's, let's say, like, quote unquote, just a friendship or any other type of relationship, you have to really consider how much time and energy you have available to give into that. And also, like, it's very important to just take time for yourself. Like, for me, I've been finding that it's more and more important to have time to be alone and to be able to process my feelings. Yeah, then I think it's a really important thing to have in mind when you are trying to date multiple people. Yeah, definitely a thing.
Yeah, and it's something that I kind of only come to terms with quite recently, is my own schedule. Like, if someone's like, oh, I'm free on this day, do you want to meet up on this day? And I look at my calendar and I'm like, well, I could do that day because I'm technically free that day, but actually that's the only free day I've got in that whole week. Whereas
Yeah.
previously I would have gone, well, they've offered me that time, I'm going to take it. Whereas now I'd say, actually, no, because I don't want to do it. Even though I've not no technical plans on that day, I want to keep that day empty for a reason. So can we do the week after, or etc. Which is, that's a very recent bit of learning I've done myself on my own part.
Yeah, for me too. It's a very recent thing. And it's not easy. Saying no, it's not easy.
No, but that's also one thing that I've kind of come to terms with, which helps me a lot, is that if someone's really interested, and if you think it's a positive situation, actually it's okay to wait. It's never worth rushing into anything. And if it's like there's no rush. If you're getting on with someone and they say, oh, should we go out? Should we go on a date, or should we meet up, or should we do whatever? But I can't see you. I'm busy for the next 4 weeks. Can we meet after that?
Yeah.
It's very easy to go, oh no, that's really far away. I don't want to wait that long. But actually, it's still going to come around, and they still want to see you. It's not that they're bobbing you off. It's just that that's their next free available time. They're giving you their next free available time. That's a good thing. And like, those 4 weeks will fly by before you know it, and then you'll be out on that date and you'll probably have a good time. So yeah, I think it is good to learn that it's okay to wait. Like, just having patience. And I think a lot of people, especially when new to non-monogamy, kind of like I said, dogs chasing cars, they want everything and they want it straight away. But like, no, actually it's okay to plan ahead and it will come around. But yeah, I don't think everyone necessarily thinks that way. And I think I didn't necessarily until, especially when I was at the start of beginning to explore this stuff.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I agree with you. And on top of that, like, I agree with the no rush part, and you have to be patient and you can allow time to things to develop. And also, like, if that doesn't happen, it's also fine. Like, it's okay to have no expectations. And I learned that I don't have to act on every feeling that I have, so it's very empowering to feel that I can experience being attracted to someone and still decide that is not wise, or is not good for me, or sometimes it's not good for the other person, or it's not good for other relationships that we have in our life, to actually act on a feeling or on a desire. And I feel that once you did that for the first time, or you've done that a few times, it actually becomes much easier to deal with the frustration that comes with that. So yeah, and like, those are a lot of small things that I've learned through this process that I never thought would come from this. And again, like, having time to reflect on those things and process those feelings, for me, is really important, at least. And then that's when where it comes the importance of having time for myself, and like, to reflect, and to go to therapy and to discuss these things with my friends and other people in my life. Yeah, it really helps.
Yeah, it's and this is again one of those things that I'd say that, like, I think monogamous people should also learn, or would do them
Definitely.
well to learn. And I don't mean within a monogamous relationship. I mean just people in general. Anyone should learn this stuff. Just understanding that, like, if you haven't seen a friend for a while and you send them a message and say, hey, do you want to hang out? Do you want to go for a drink over the next week? And they respond and say, no, I can't. Actually, I'm really busy this month, but I can do next month. Well, that's okay. They're still making time for you, and they're fitting that in. Whereas I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, what? You're fobbing me off, or I don't want to have to wait that long." So there's a term for it, which is delayed gratification, and I think a lot of people struggle with it. A lot of people clamor for instant gratification and generally don't have patience in that area and don't like to wait for things. But it's definitely, I think, a really, really good thing to be able to learn about yourself and how to handle that.
Yeah, I might be going like out of a tangent here now, but what I think from that, it's because maybe people have very set expectations on how relationships should develop. And I guess like when it comes to someone that you're trying to date or you see a potential relationship, you kind of have like a timeline in your head of how things should develop. And when they don't, you kind of like feel that you have to just chase the next best thing, instead of be waiting around. And I guess when you give up those expectations and you just allow things to be the way that they can be or the way they are, then you open a lot of other doors to many other possibilities. And I find that very, very beautiful because sometimes I'm not even expecting that something will come up of a connection or someone I met randomly. And then months later, you're developing a very nice relationship and you're like finding that the person is awesome. And yeah, that's so beautiful. And then it brings me so much happiness when these things happen. So yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of people would benefit from just relaxing a bit when it comes to that, and also planning ahead, because I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to plan ahead and like putting things on the calendar. And yeah, as you said, like 4 weeks are gonna fly by and you're hopefully soon be like enjoying the company of that person.
And then not only that, but soon after that, the next 4 weeks will fly by and you'll be on your second date with them. And you're not then looking back going like, oh, it took so long to get to this point. You're just enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I always do now, quite early on when I'm talking to people where I think, okay, this may be going somewhere or has the potential to go somewhere. Is I lay all my cards out on the table and I'll be like, look, this is my situation. I've got these things going on in my life. This is how much time I've actually got. This is what I can offer you. Are you okay with that or not? Because if not, then that's fine. We just won't let this escalate any further. It can stay where it is. We can stay as friends or whatever it is. But because I don't want anyone to get to a point where they're wanting or expecting more from me than I can give. And then adversely, I'll ask the other person as well. So like, right, what exactly is it you're looking for? What have you got time for? And if someone's like, oh, well, ideally, I'm looking for a relationship. I want someone that I can message with every day. I want to spend time together 2 evenings a week. I'd say, okay, that's fine. I can't give you that. And it's not anything to do with you personally. I just don't have the time and the energy for that. If you want to exchange messages every few days and meet up in person once every 2 or 3 weeks, I'm down. I've got time for that. I'm completely on board. Let's go. But that's where I'm at. So let's get that all laid out on the table before things go any further. And that way, no one can be let down. No one can be hurt. Are we compatible at this stage or not? And it makes things so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. I guess the difficulty there is that not a lot of people will have the clarity to lay the cards on the table about what they want and what they can offer. And I guess that also a lot of people won't know how to have that negotiation, like without necessarily feeling rejected, because I guess some people want to feel that, oh, if it's meant to be, let's say, it's just going to evolve and you won't have to do the work. But I completely agree with you. And that's how I try to communicate as well, even though sometimes I feel that because the other person is not necessarily as clear about what they want and what they can offer, then the conversation becomes a bit one-sided. It's what I've experienced at some points.
Yeah, I completely get that. And again, that's one of those ways of figuring out compatibility early doors. You can, if that conversation doesn't go well, then that probably tells you a lot about how the relationship will end up going as well.
That's fair.
So maybe that gives you the answer that you need at that point. Yeah,
it's a good point.
So one thing I want to ask you is, what have some of the most rewarding aspects been of practicing non-monogamy? What do you take away from it? What do you look back now and you think, this is a really good thing I've learned about myself, or that I've learned about people or the world in general?
I guess probably the main thing is that I am not as afraid of being alone as I once was. Yeah, I guess, for most of my life growing up and then beginning of my adult life, I was always chasing a romantic relationship that would be the center of my life. And when I didn't have that, I was feeling alone most of the time. And then, again, what you said earlier about the fear, and like, if I was in a relationship, even if it wasn't working well, I would do everything I could to just maintain that in order to not be alone. And even after I started this journey, I still felt that pressure, and sometimes a feeling that, at some point, all my friends are gonna find partners and I'm gonna be left behind. And I'm not gonna say that I'm completely free of that fear, and I do struggle with it at some points. But the more I nurture my connections, my friendships, my relationships, the less I feel afraid of that, because I'm building a very strong support network, like a proper network of people that support me and I support them, and they are also connected between each other. So it feels stronger in a way, and also finding like-minded people who see the world in a similar way and want to build that for the future, not only like focus on one relationship, but they do want to have a group of people that support each other. So I guess that's the main thing. And then I think one thing that I said earlier is that once you give up the expectations of having a certain type of relationship with someone, you open so many other possibilities to grow that relationship. And then sometimes you just receive things from people that you never thought you would have, because you're just releasing them from the experience, the expectation that they will fulfill a certain role in your life, and then they just are who they are, and that's really, really beautiful. And they also allow you to be whatever you want to be, So I guess for me those are the main things.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. I think that's actually a really good answer for people to hear as well. Because I think it can be difficult for people, when they start exploring these things, to know what is not necessarily the end goal, but what am I actually going to get out of this? I think it's important for people to be able to hear these different positive aspects that maybe they haven't thought about before, or they haven't, people just don't generally talk about. And I think it's also important, like you said, you're not completely free of the fear of being alone. You still struggle a little bit with that. And I think that's important as well, because a lot of people, I think, are looking for an end goal, and they think the end goal is where you don't have any bad feelings, you don't have negative feelings, and you're happy all the time. But it's not really achievable. I think everyone has negative feelings sometimes about everything, and you're never going to get over it. That's just part of how it is. But I think it's very easy to just assume that people are happy with what they're doing all the time, and it's always positive, and that's something that they should be striving for.
Yeah. No, I don't think anyone 100% happy 100% of the time. I don't think that's realistic to expect. But I guess it's like learning and just appreciating the good things you have, being grateful. And
Yeah, definitely. So following on from that, are there anything that you've learned over the last 2 years that if you could go back in time, you would do things differently when you first started exploring non-monogamy?
Oh, there are a lot of things, but I don't think I would say, of course, like I do have regrets and I wish I could have dealt with situations in a better way and like sometimes avoid hurting people, hurting myself. But I think it was just all part of the process, and I know that I was doing the best I could, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, not really, because I'm really happy with how I am, who I am, and the people in my life at this point. And I know that I'll be still doing the best I can every time, every opportunity I have. So no, not really. I'm really happy.
No, that's good. And I think that's a general answer, to be honest. There's like no regrets, because if you did anything differently, you wouldn't be who you are now. And actually,
Yeah.
even the things that feel negative at the time are a learning experience. And you change because you've gone through that and you dealt with it and you know how to deal with a similar situation in future if it comes up. So, yeah, I think it's a good answer. So in a similar vein to that question, are there any particular myths about non-monogamy that you think are important to debunk? You know, things that are just out there that when people bring up non-monogamy, it's the sort of things that you hear spoken about, which you think is actually not true.
Yeah, I think like one of the main ones for me is that people see that think you're only doing like having casual relationships with the people that you're dating. And for me, it's quite the opposite. Like, as you're saying earlier, like you try to lay your cards very early on and be very clear about what you can offer, what you want from relationships. And that makes a relationship be, I would say, much more serious, not in a way that you're highly committed from the get-go, but you're more serious about what you're offering and like what you expect from people. And I feel that it's less casual in that sense. Even if you're not committing a lot of your time, you're still committing to that time that you're committing, you know? See what you mean? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me, I don't really understand what a casual relationship means, because if casual means that you're not being clear about what you want and what you can offer, then yeah, I'm not doing casual. And I feel that a lot of people will think that non-monogamy is about having a lot of casual relationships, and I feel it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and I completely agree with you. That the whole casual thing, and it's the thing that when people are like, oh, what, you're non-monogamous? What, you have sex with other people? Like, I always think, why are you focusing on sex? Why is that the important part of that to you? Because as I was saying earlier, like it's actually taught me to value my friendships more. So actually, my friendships are kind of less casual than I used to think of them as. They actually are more serious because I actually put a bit more stock in my friendships than I would have done previously. That's far from being a casual thing. You know, not like I'm expecting my friends to message me every day and we're going to see each other all the time, but it's just that, you know, their time or my time spent with them is more important to me. So yeah, as you said, that it's more actually about having more serious, not more serious relationships, but there's more seriousness in each of your relationships. It's definitely not sex focused and it's not just all casual.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's very well said. It's having more seriousness in your relationships. I love that.
Yeah. So one more question I've got for you is, if someone you know or you're close to is new to experiencing non-monogamy and they said, can you give me some tips? Where should I start? What is the first thing you would say to them?
I would want to say so many things, but I
Just
guess
the first thing. So this is like, what would your key one piece of advice be? The first thing you tell someone before anything else?
go study, I guess. Read a lot, listen to a lot of podcasts, talk to people, and maybe just find other non-monogamous people to be friends with, people that you're going to be able to tell things and won't judge you, and will listen and help you digest everything that you're feeling, because it's a lot. it's really, really a lot in the beginning.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think having other people around that understand that you can talk to about. I think one thing with like monogamous people, say if you've got multiple partners and you break up, if you've got two partners, say, and you break up with one of them, a monogamous person says, "So what? You've still got the other person."
Yeah.
But so what? That's not the point. It's not about counting up or quantity, how many people you've got around. A breakup is still a breakup. That's still a relationship ending. That you couldn't talk to a monogamous friend about that. They wouldn't understand. So having other non-monogamous friends around that you can talk to about these sort of things openly can make a world of difference. It really can.
Yeah, of course. And then I think the other problem is also that they're gonna jump to blame non-monogamy for your misery. So they're probably gonna say something, "Oh yeah, but you tried that, so you had this coming," instead of listening to your problem and trying to like support you and like give advice or anything. They would jump to say that, "Oh yeah, you chose this, so you kind of deserve this this suffering," which happened to me in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I think because they don't understand non-monogamy, they see that as the thing that's wrong. They don't see the fact of like whatever went wrong in the relationship. They see it as that's the non-monogamy, which is the issue, and that's why that relationship didn't work out. But I wonder if their other monogamous friend had a breakup, would they comfort them because they're now single? Is that where the importance lies? Like, well, you're not single, you're not alone, therefore you shouldn't be sad. Whereas this person who's monogamous, they're now alone, and therefore I'm going to comfort them. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about the fact that the relationship has just ended. It doesn't matter if you're now alone or not. I don't feel like that should be relevant.
Yeah, I completely agree. But yeah, unfortunately, that's not how the world works, at least at this point. And yeah, it's just like what we can do is try to change that bit by bit, right?
Yeah, and the more widespread non-monogamy becomes, the more it gets talked about, the more it appears on, in the news and TV and films, whatever, the more it's just out there in the zeitgeist and people start to hear about it, the more people will understand about it, and hopefully the easier it will become for everyone in the long run. But I think it's a very, very long road to get to that point.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I think we're almost done. So I've got one last question for you, which is, if you could sum up non-monogamy for yourself in a couple of words, 2 or 3 words, what would they be?
That's a hard one. But I think freedom, autonomy, and support from my network, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. I wasn't thinking of 3 individual words, but more like a phrase or something.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's great because no one else has done it yet. No one else has taken it the way you did, and that's actually a really good answer. I think you basically given me 3 different answers in one, so that's perfect.
Okay.
That's great. Yep. So on that note, that is the end of this episode. So thank you, Julie, for sharing your experiences with me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. It was great to have you. So to everyone listening, remember, if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, then please send an email to spillingtheteapodcast@outlook.com. Follow us on social media for all podcast updates. I'll see you next time when I spill more tea on non-monogamy.